Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jeff Sim. I'm the VP of Business Development at Ionomr Innovations and also the moderator for today's event. I would like to give everyone a warm welcome to Ionomr's first webinar series. We hope this will be the first of many to come, and for today, we're going to be focusing on three main topics. One, the Canadian National Hydrogen Strategy. We're going to revisit the main topics and give a high-level overview of hydrogen. 2, who and what is Ionomr, and why is Ionomr technology critical to the future trajectory of the hydrogen economy? And 3, last but not least, how Ionomr technology can enable the goals set out by the Canadian National Hydrogen Strategy. Our presenter today is Dr. Ben Britton. About a decade ago, Ben was working through his PhD at Simon Fraser University as an electrochemist. He saw the value proposition of the advanced materials that were being developed that would one day be revolutionary to change the course of the use and production of hydrogen, and pursued a worldwide exclusive patent. As a result, it was spun out of the university and he co-founded what we are today, Ionomr Innovations. And before I let Ben take over, I would like to ask everyone to type your questions in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer them at the end of our presentation. And we're also pleased to let you know that this presentation will be recorded and shared across our social media platform and from our website. Ben, please take it over.
Hello, everyone. In this webinar, I'm going to start with a description of hydrogen, its fit in the energy system, its rapidly growing momentum in Canada and around the world, and then move on to a description of Ionomr, our technology, and how we can hypercharge the hydrogen and CCU activities in Canada by strongly driving the goals set in 4 of the key pillars in the Canadian Hydrogen Strategy. So in the beginning, there was hydrogen. Within 3 minutes of the Big Bang, all of the matter in the universe was this, and it glows purple when it's excited. So now you know what everything looked like at the beginning of time. Hydrogen is incredibly light. But water is 11% hydrogen by mass, meaning that 9 liters of water can produce a kilogram, but it is so energy dense that that will drive an electric vehicle 100 kilometers. However, there are some negatives to its being light. 1 kilogram of uncompressed hydrogen is 11,000 liters, so it needs to be compressed where it is produced and typically stored at high pressure, like natural gas, or as a cryogenic liquid, like liquid natural gas, LNG. It is highly to fully compatible, in fact, with natural gas production and distribution systems. Hydrogen, despite its reputation, is one of the safest fuels. It is extremely quick to diffuse and non-toxic, in fact slightly healthy, making it safer than other fuels such as gasoline, natural gas, ammonia, and methanol. Hydrogen is a versatile energy carrier used in an electrochemical energy conversion system like fuel cells. It can operate at up to double the efficiencies of an internal combustion engine or hydrofan. And it can be used in combustion to produce heat to decarbonize industrial processes and sectors. And it can be used directly as a feedstock. In fact, it is produced at the megaton scale today in various processes around the world. And I'll get more into that later. It is also incredibly beneficial to transport energy from not just on site, but from region to region. In ThyssenKrupp and Hydrogen in Europe estimate that it is more than 8 times more effective than expanding electrification from region to region. A single 24-inch pipeline is the same, in fact, as 8 high-tension wires, making it more practical in terms of zoning. And it is non-toxic and carbon-free at the point of use. It can be produced using intermittent renewables as an alternative baseload in the electrical generation system. Hydrogen is vitally important in the world energy transition because we have reached a point where efficiency gains are insufficient to reach the 2030 goals, and electrifying everything actually shifts the onus from molecular-based energy, which is 80% or more of industrialized economies today, into an electrical grid that can't handle going to full deployment of zero CO2 energy. As a result, new zero CO2 molecular energy carriers are needed, and hydrogen is the best candidate, being versatile to produce, both through steam methane reformate and direct splitting of water in particular. And it can play and is forecasted to play a critical role in Canada's ambitions to meet our Paris Agreement commitments. So you'll hear a lot about the colors of hydrogen, and there are three main colors today. Gray hydrogen, which is produced through steam methane reforming. It's about half of all the hydrogen that's produced in the world today. And brown hydrogen through coal gasification, which is roughly speaking the other half of the 95% that is produced from non-green sources. Blue hydrogen is a forecasted advance to gray hydrogen, and in that the CO2 produced in this process can be captured or utilized into renewable liquid fuel or chemical feedstocks. Green hydrogen directly splits water and is paired with intermittent renewable energy to produce true zero CO2 hydrogen via electrolysis. Hydrogen is a key energy carrier, and multiple energy agencies around the world, including the International Energy Agency, World Energy Council, and IRENA, all see it playing up to a 25% role in decarbonizing the planet. It can in fact address 60% of all GHG emissions globally, including what is known as the hard to abate third of GHG emissions. And this analysis is strongly backed by industry. In fact, preceding the IEA, WEC, and IRENA, who were all skeptics of hydrogen for decades, the World Hydrogen Council formed. And this is an alliance of more than 100 world-leading companies representing more than 100 trillion in revenue. And they are the ones who came up with this 60% figure. And it spans multiple competencies within Canada in the industrial space, transitioning from power generation through transportation applications, heating and storage, and industrial energy and feedstocks into the chemical industry. And again, Canada has significant competencies in every one of these subsectors. And the rapidly growing market opportunities are distributed between all of these sectors, especially in the jump to 2040 and 2050. Canada's ambition within the hydrogen strategy is for this to be a $50 billion sector for the economy by 2050. But the global opportunity is 12 trillion, and taking an early leadership position will actually could 10x or more of this opportunity for Canada in that time period, is our firm belief. Because Canada has many advantages, in addition to being a technology leader in key technologies that are the most efficient way of producing green and blue hydrogen, as well as carbon capture and utilization, we have proximity to all of the largest markets and an established infrastructure for natural gas and liquid natural gas. We have vast hydroelectric deployments in British Columbia and Quebec, which can more cost effectively be made into hydrogen for transportation into the key markets of the United States, both the Eastern Corridor in California, North Asia, specifically Japan, South Korea, and China, and Europe across the entire EU. And so we can take this leading innovation and industry position and marry it with our strong energy sector and our established energy export channels to hypercharge hydrogen and CCU products into these large markets. And there is a growing case for going green. The existing gray hydrogen and brown hydrogen that exists in the world today is, as I mentioned, more than 95% of global production. And in fact, fully green hydrogen is only 0.1% of production today, mainly sourced from the technology that was developed more than 100 years ago in Norway. However, green hydrogen is projected to become cost competitive with gray and blue hydrogen in the 2030 to 2035 timescale, which will drive expansion. Ionomr's technology will pull this forward even more quickly and lead producers, the first 2 gigawatt factories for both of the leading technologies for green hydrogen actually have 2024 targets for reaching what is currently the 2030 to 2035 cost trajectories. So the learning curve of green hydrogen is in fact a lot faster than anybody is projecting, because green hydrogen right now is at a much earlier stage than you would imagine from taking the entire hydrogen market in the world today. And the goal of all of these major energy industries is that 2/3 of all hydrogen will be green by 2050, and the rest will be blue hydrogen. And all of these, again, pair with major competencies within Canada, because Canada is pioneering carbon capture and utilization technologies in addition to CCS. And this utilization piece is incredibly critical for blue hydrogen to be cost competitive in 2050 as well. In fact, there is a 1,700 gigawatt target for hydrogen electrolyzers and over 100 gigawatts by 2030. This is an annual growth rate of 35%. And there's no other industrial sector that you can see which could promise even half of that growth rate in this time trajectory. So it is an incredibly important investment, and every dollar that is spent today in this sector will reap massive benefits to the future prosperity of Canada and a CO2-free world. And much of the G20 either has published or in late process hydrogen strategies, and this is a high-level look at all of these markets. And this is where it's important that hydrogen strategy in Canada encompasses green hydrogen as a major focus alongside blue hydrogen, not just because assets that are supposed to last for 20 or 30 years have to be cost competitive across their entire lifetime, but many of the import markets have green-only policies, especially in markets like California and parts of the EU. It's also worth noting that methane pyrolysis is just a dream at this point, and we really don't believe that it will be more cost competitive than blue hydrogen, given advantages in carbon utilization on the back of blue hydrogen. At the Clean Tech Forum recently, I heard a proponent describe the future business model of turquoise hydrogen as buying coal mines and shoveling black powder down them. But by contrast, CCU can give us at least 600 megatons per year of carbon negative plastics, carbon negative methanol, ethanol, and other key chemicals that underlie all of the industry, and as well as ammonia. So this really encompasses the top 4 industrial chemicals in the world. And the hydrogen economy has really rolled out this year. The majority of the G20 in 2020 alone, including Canada in December, which we were incredibly excited about and was obviously one of the major impetuses behind this webinar. So Ionomr's role in all of this is to provide the key building blocks in the most efficient systems for hydrogen in its production, in green hydrogen, its use, its most efficient use in hydrogen fuel cells, and in CO2 electrolyzers, which is the step that's necessary, the bridge to make the production of hydrogen from natural gas a green process. And this will replace the legacy cost solutions more cost effectively than is currently there. And this has been well modeled out in recent years. In fact, it is estimated that once the assets are depreciated to the extent that oil and gas assets are depreciated today, this will be more than 30% more cost effective than the energy system that we have today, a fully renewable energy system. And Europe has an integrated model already, in fact, for an all hydrogen system with the base region-to-region transportation being fully in place by 2040. And they have modeled this down to less than 2 weeks downtime per century at 100% renewable energy inputs. And all of this is based on hydrogen as the key energy vector. So Ionomr, if you look carefully, we've put the logos on where we have substantial cost driving inputs. And there's a lot of Ionomr logos in here. It comes at the heart of this diagram, the electrolyzer or CO2 production facility in the industrial plant, where we drive the cost of hydrogen down, and this makes all of the subsequent applications more cost competitive. Fuel cells, buying hydrogen at $2 per kilogram or less versus $12 at the pump today, are far more cost competitive with other emerging technologies, and our materials in fuel cells drive the overall system costs down, in particular in the heavy duty sector, which is fully necessary to decarbonize aviation and heavy shipping and long haul transport and buses and other applications. And Ionomr solutions can substantially drive down the cost and increase the effectiveness of the strategy across Canada on a regionalized basis. Again, using the vast hydroelectric resources in British Columbia and Quebec, the expertise in oil and gas in Alberta, British Columbia and Saskatchewan, the nuclear and wind resources in Ontario, and all of the end use applications regionalized across Canada. It's important for utility scale use of energy and generation of CO2-free products, but it's also important for microgrids. And in fact, Ionomr's technologies, by driving down the capital equipment cost, make remote grids based on fully renewable energy incredibly more cost effective than any other solution possible today. And these sectors drive global greenhouse gas reductions. Again, taking a mid-term case of the major energy industries, this could represent up to 10 gigatons in 2050 in an intermediate case. And we also replace membrane manufacturing disposal. At the heart of many key technologies, there's actually toxic and non-beneficial materials that drive F-gases into the atmosphere in current processes today. Ionomr has the first and only commercial materials to prevent this sector from growing, to prevent F-gases, permanent GHGs, from going into our atmosphere, and to prevent PFAS, permanent toxins in the environment, from going into our groundwater. And driving the decline of greenhouse gas emissions precipitously is vitally important. A recent Nature paper said at least $20 trillion in value will be added to the global economy by meeting the 1.5 degree target versus the 2 degree target. But the high end is actually on the range of 80 to 90 trillion. And this is where Canada can have a disproportionate impact, decarbonizing not only Canadian emissions, but well beyond that. In addition, this is a slide showing how bad PFAS materials really are in the world. F-gases produced from their incineration, which is the current recycling process in many of the key applications, PEM electrolyzers, PEM fuel cells, as well as many battery technologies that use actually the same class of materials, produces F-gases that have a half-life greater than 10,000 years. They're forever strong GHGs. And in the groundwater, everybody actually has a toxic body burden in North America, North Asia, and Europe. Many of the key compounds, two of the key compounds are on the Stockholm list of persistent organic pollutants and are grandfathered until there's a viable replacement. And again, in the most intransitive, intractable applications, Ionomr has the first and only replacement. Europe estimates $60 to $95 billion in health effects per year. And in the era of COVID, it's important to note that these are immunosuppressants as well as carcinogens and teratogens. So we cannot pump these into the environment in any means. They should be treated like nuclear waste. So again, Ionomr is a game changer with offering replacements. They're more than a decade in the making, and they're both moonshot projects solving 30 to 50-year goals that industry had given up on. They were commercialized out of Simon Fraser University in the Holdcroft Lab, who's a CRC Tier 1 chair in electrochemical materials, and one of the handful of labs globally who kept the flame alive when modern industry abandoned the research into alternatives. We have broad blocking patents as a result in the only two material families that are meaningfully stable and high performing in relevant conditions. And these broad blocking patents are multi-layered and more powerful than pharmaceutical patents covering a whole host of families for both current and future generations. We have been significantly supported in our commercialization activities by a joint project between Sustainable Development Technology Canada and the BC Innovative Clean Energy Fund, as well as by multiple NRC IRAP projects, including the CO2 Materials Challenge, where our materials have come to underpin many of the projects, as well as a Carbon X Prize contender. So what are these two materials families? On the right-hand side, we have the direct replacement for fluorinated materials, which are typically known as naphthalene, the material that was invented in the Second World War by DuPont. It's a solid superacid barrier to gas, liquid, and electricity, and it selectively transports positively charged species, including acid protons. Those are the H pluses that you see crossing this separator material in the middle of the fuel cell diagram there. And on the left-hand side, we have our amine materials. And this is a new category of materials that we invented as the first and only indefinitely stable commercial materials in strong base, so hot drain cleaner. And polymer species don't work well in these conditions, but metals do. And so instead of using huge amounts of precious metals to coat all of the systems, you can use base metals, so nickel-coated stainless steel or even lower-cost systems are stable in these materials. And this is for electrolysis, both the water electrolysis for hydrogen and CO2 electrolysis for blue hydrogen and CCU products. This is a game changer in the cost trajectory of these systems. And this is, again, a step change in these cornerstone systems because CapEx can be reduced more than 50% versus either of the competing technologies for clean hydrogen generation for a 30 to 40% cost advantage at literally any scale in delivered hydrogen cost. And this is the only pathway for less than $1 kilogram of hydrogen, validated by our major JDA partner, Nourian, formerly AkzoNobel Specialty Chemicals, a multi-billion-dollar chemical producer in Europe, who has a commitment for 4 gigawatts of electrolyzers by 2030. And taking a very conservative take on our technology, showed more than $1 billion US savings on that 4 gigawatt commitment. In CO2 electrolysis, traditional CCU is very expensive because not just because of platinum use in these electrolyzer systems. That is really a nascent technology. Traditional CCU uses cement type chemical reactors, which have incredibly high temperature and pressure swings, which reduce, and every one of those reduces efficiency by 20 to 30% or greater. Our materials operate near room temperature and don't require any pressure swings. And so the innate creation of carbon utilization products is vastly more efficient. And a major OEM in Europe integrating our materials, as well as a carbon X prize contender, swapped out their incumbent materials with our materials and achieved a 3x output at the same efficiency of their system, which immediately reduced the capex of their system by 66%. And the partner in Europe actually said that for this multi-megaton market they were chasing in their integrated system on the back end of a steel mill, they went from having a cost for the CCU into making a profit of $50 per ton carbon, and that's a game changer. A startup in Vancouver, I'm sure you've all heard of, named Carbon Engineering, has a best case scenario of $100 per ton cost for carbon utilization using traditional methods, which is called Fischer-Tropsch, a reverse combustion process on the back end for utilization products. And that creates a whole range of things. It really requires a whole petrochemical industry type separation, just like you would have from crude oil, in order to make this into efficient products. Instead, electrochemical utilization creates 1 or 2 products, which are already concentrated, don't require further purification. So that is much higher value, and you only get those products. So instead of flooding the market with waxes that you have to pay to get rid of, which is the major pain point, or again, buying coal mines and shoveling asphalt back down them, you can make the things that are most in value in the world. And that is incredibly important for cost-effective decarbonization of blue hydrogen in the long run. In addition, we have game-changing materials for fuel cells, and I'll get a little more into the exact benefits, but by reducing the degradation of the membrane component and the precious metal catalyst, we can increase the lifetime, the efficiency, and the range of heavy-duty systems in particular. We also hit a 40-year goal of high temperature operation, which is literally impossible to achieve with incumbent materials and fully necessary for decarbonizing aviation using fuel cell technologies. And we're working with one of the world's largest companies in an early stage in exploring this opportunity. In advancing fuel cell electric vehicle technology, higher temperature operation doesn't just unlock aviation, but it also unlocks off-the-shelf system components to reduce system complexity and also cause a non-linearity step change decrease in the cost of integrated fuel cell systems, both for light duty and heavy duty, in fact. And the chemical stability again solves two of the major lifetime pain points, which have been addressed through very advanced engineering, but have never been addressed at a fundamental level. Fluorinated materials are magic materials, and it took absolutely modern chemistry and Ionomr pioneering a new method of making polymers to achieve a viable replacement. And finally, at end of life, by having no fluorinated materials, you can recover all of this platinum and create truly cyclical electrolyzer and fuel cell applications. In the CCU as a bridge technology, we can effectively extend the life of deployed assets. I mentioned quite a lot about natural gas, but also steam methane reforming technologies that are already existing in Canada. And Canada is a home to 20% of the world's existing products here. So Ionomr has received significant industry recognition. In 2018, we were recognized by the World Energy Council for being a game changer in the cost of hydrogen. In 2019, Anglo-American and the Chinese Society of Automotive Engineers recognized us as the most promising corporation, both for the cost of hydrogen and as being a game changer in fuel cell technologies. Nurian, a JDA partner, as I mentioned, did a global survey of materials and solutions for hydrogen and chose Ionomr. We were called the top hydrogen startup in the Energy Tech Summit forum last year. And the SAE in China again recognized us as a cutting edge innovation in fuel cell technologies. And we became the first Canadian company to win the Product and Market Award, the top award in fuel cell technologies in the world, at the Fuel Cell Expo in Stuttgart earlier this year. And we were incredibly proud of that honor. Ionomr has engagements with more than 50 customers at various stages, including 5 full format industrial pilot scales, several small scales, and many in qualification across all of these sectors. In mobility, working with Tier 1 automotive manufacturers, fuel cell stack suppliers, aerospace corporations, and heavy-duty equipment manufacturers. In hydrogen, again with Nurian as a key sponsor of HydroHub, which is in the Netherlands and is looking at the cost trajectory of gigawatt scale deployments in particular. And in CO2 to value, again, through the NRC Materials Challenge program, really driving bleeding edge technology here, as well as in existing carbon to value type technologies through major OEMs and Fortune 100 companies. We have a highly experienced management team. Our CEO and VP operations actually were 2 of the key members of SiGe, an NRC process technology spinout that morphed into a device company that specialized in Wi-Fi radios and took this to the world, to billions of units. I am a device technologist with expertise across all of the applications that we're targeting. Our CTO, Dr. Tim Peckham, is a polymer chemist with more than 20 years experience in exactly ion exchange materials and their commercialization. And Jeff Sim, our VP of Business and Process Development, has more than 10 years in building global partnerships through the manufacturing and finance sectors. So Ionomr addresses 4 of the key pillars of the hydrogen strategy. There's 32 recommendations overall for Canada to achieve its objectives. And again, I firmly believe that the Canadian government and key agencies within Canada, connecting all of the Canadian innovation and oil and gas and technology sectors, manufacturing sectors within Canada, can hypercharge these, more than exceed the goals that we have laid out before us. Ionomr is in fact the only Canadian ion exchange materials supplier. The United States, EU, Japan, and China all have localized suppliers. They right now support the chlor-alkali industry for chlorine production and caustic production. But we enable pathways around that, in fact, and we can be the Canadian partner to create a fully Canadian value chain. We enable the hydrogen and CCU sectors to stay in Canada, to make their profit and materials all the way through mass manufacturing in Canada, because in particular Alberta is looking to retool their oil and gas industries, but really all of the Canadian provinces are affected by this. And we can promote growth in electrochemical equipment providers, again, across all of these technologies, as well as electrochemical compression systems and other nascent technologies. And so this is, Ionomr is a great partnership driver. We, in addition to this STTC and BC ICE project, have been underpinned multiple grant applications all around the world through the EU and US Department of Energy in particular. So we know that we can cross industry segments and enhance public-private partnerships. And we want to do this in Canada. And we can attract direct foreign investment because there's no market hotter than hydrogen right now. And especially on the equipment side, there are dozens of opportunities on a weekly basis that are coming up now. The world has really focused on hydrogen and CCU technologies in a big way. It is estimated that 5 to 7 billion of combined public and private investment is needed in the next 5 years through this hydrogen strategy. But I easily see that being tripled because Alberta in particular can morph its precision manufacturing industry to chase this sector and do it better than anybody else in the world. And in innovation, we're a step change ahead. Canada has this NRC CO2 Materials Challenge program, in fact, multiple materials challenge programs through NRCan and the NRC IRAP. And we also, there's something called Nickel Electrocan, a research network that spans Canadian catalysis research. And again, we're a key game changer in actual demonstration of these materials. And we have world-leading innovation in Canada across all of these market verticals. And again, by reducing the capex precipitously, we can show that Ionomr and CCU technologies can follow the same pathway of solar and wind technologies. Because here's a cost comparison of PEM electrolysis, and traditional alkaline electrolysis actually follows much the same cost curve at any given scale. We are a step change and a nonlinearity in this cost, and that can drive the cost of these technologies to being cost competitive within the next 5 years, with not just taking the cost of green and blue hydrogen on par with gray hydrogen, but actually exceeding that. And nonlinearity in costs cause massive adoptions. And this graph in particular is the one that gives me the most hope for the future of our planet. This is real photovoltaic solar deployments in the world versus International Energy Agency predictions. And since 2006, the International Energy Agency has been gloriously incorrect in photovoltaic deployments. And in fact, in 2021, we're estimated to get to 200 gigawatts of deployment, plus or minus 10. This is true exponential growth, and this is only precipitated by the cost of solar getting down to where people would have laughed at you 10 years ago, saying it's 25 cents per watt installed, and there's a future in solar down to 4 cents per watt. And this makes energy, especially paired with electrolyzers by intermittent renewables, more cost competitive than incumbent systems. And so here's where, by driving this cost nonlinearity and a full end-to-end value chain in Canada, Canada can take a leading position in international markets for export. Branding and promoting Canadian solutions early will be important to gain market acceptance. We're competing with these markets with Australia and Chile, neither of which have experience with natural gas and the other products of CCU deployments that are necessary for an integrated hydrogen and CCU strategy. And the distances to key markets are so much closer here. We have so much existing infrastructure, which has over a 10x advantage in conversion versus building new infrastructure. So we have these deployed assets. We have assets that have a trajectory to being unused in natural gas, and we can use all of these to gain and to grow the energy sector within Canada massively in the next decade. So just in conclusion, hydrogen is the flexible solution for an energy vector for production, storage, and export, enabling deep decarbonization of up to 60% of all GHGs, in particular in the heavy industry segments that Canada is known for. The cost of current solutions, even at scale, are considered prohibitive, and a non-linearity in CapEx is necessary for technology innovation to actually hit these aggressive targets, and Ionomr is an enabler of that. AEM electrolysis in particular cuts the green hydrogen cost up to 40% delivered at any scale. Our hydrocarbon membranes are a game changer for fuel cell systems and the first replacement of the fundamental materials ever achieved that are viable in these systems. And again, we're a non-linear game changer in the most efficient way of utilizing CO2. And we firmly believe that our $50 billion market opportunity by 2050 in our hydrogen strategy can be 10x'd by doubling down on the early position. Because export markets will be highly competitive, but with the lead position that we can gain as lead technologists and as lead industrial players in the energy sector, by marrying those two segments, Canada can take this leadership position. So thank you very much for all your time and attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Ben, thank you for this insightful presentation. We'll now be moving on to the question and answer section. So, are there any other competitors developing technologies similar to Ionomr's? And if so, what are Ionomr's advantages compared to these companies?
Absolutely. So in the alkaline anion exchange materials, there are a handful of companies based in the United States that have been heavily supported by the US Department of Energy over the last decade. However, Ionomr is at over 1,000 times the scale today, with incredibly more efficient technology, and in fact, the only indefinitely stable materials. So the large majority of effort in the world has been around something called quats or quaternary ammoniums. They're in hand sanitizer, they're everywhere. They're a very commonly known class of materials. They have, in alkaline systems, you can mitigate these degradation mechanisms, but you can't prevent them. So you will see papers out of companies saying that they have a half-life of 5,000 or 10,000 hours, but that means that their devices fail in 500 hours, and that is not something that's commercializable. So Ionomr, by pioneering this new class of materials with indefinite stability, is really a game changer. There are only incumbent materials, as I mentioned, for instance, the DuPont spin-out now called Chemours in the United States and Solvay in Europe, and they only make fluorinated materials. So there's no other company in the world with a direct replacement for naphthalene with the characteristics that are necessary in our target markets. And Ionomr, by having both of the two material sets put together, actually drives forward numerous bleeding edge tech as well.
Thank you. So on to the next question. This is from Brian. Is the ability to recruit homegrown talent in Canada an issue for clean technology companies like Ionomr? And if so, what can be done to foster the growth of this talent in Canada?
That is a great question. We are very blessed in Canada to have leading technology companies being based here for quite some time. So Ballard, based in Vancouver, and Hydrogenics in Mississauga have had many graduates support early stage technology companies here and have grown an ecosystem across Canada in electrochemical applications. However, recruiting talent is very difficult because the competition for this talent has grown exponentially in the last 2 years. So Canada's a very attractive location and has attractive policies for immigration, and streamlining cost of living and immigration policy here would be a major game changer. There are some programs, but they are stronger for some sectors than others. For instance, in the software sector, you can bring people to Canada much more easily than in, say, the chemical sector. And this is where we believe that there could be some gains to be had in terms of growing this talent. And universities in Canada have responded to the demand for engineering in clean technologies, and a focus more specifically on hydrogen and electrochemical technologies will only help this in future. So this is more of a longer term education policy, but electrochemical technologies are actually not well known, but Canada has a leadership position here. I mean, hydrometallurgy as well is another feed into this, and Canada is a world leader in that, although very few people know this industry sector. So we have all the talent necessary to train more talent. It's literally a university by university policy that could be enacted.
Thank you, Ben. That was a great question. Let's all work together to push Canada into the forefront of hydrogen. So next question. In addition to fuel cells and hydrogen production, can Ionomr's technology be applied to other clean technology industries, such as water, wastewater, batteries?
Yes, absolutely. Ionomr's technology as ion exchange materials are game-changing across sectors. We are focused where we have the greatest talent and see the greatest opportunity. But organizations in Canada and around the world are integrating both of our material sets into advanced battery chemistries, especially solid-state batteries, lithium-ion, lithium-sulfur, lithium-air, advanced solid-state nickel metal hydride and other alkaline battery technologies. And it's important to note that this is a major industry in Canada as well. I mean, Jeff Don and Novonix in Halifax, Molly Energy here in Vancouver, actually the inventor of the commercialized technology for lithium-ion batteries. This is another sector that can expand and grow alongside hydrogen and CCU applications. And there's other applications absolutely in industrial process water treatment, where you can create on-site chemicals cost effectively and in, again, a fully circular economy type process, in sensors, in actuators, which are for artificial muscles and things like that, and supercapacitors. There's lots of applications, and this is where we can drive a whole innovation pipeline. But again, we're just focused in the near term on these three segments.
Okay, we're moving on to another interesting question on green hydrogen competitiveness. The question is, can green hydrogen be competitive to SMR without hefty carbon taxes?
Absolutely. Again, the non-subsidized cost of green hydrogen is expected to draw equal to blue hydrogen within in the range of 2035 to 2040 by the World Energy Council, International Energy Agency, and IRENA models. And blue hydrogen, the more effective that CCU gets, actually draws close to even with SMR. Two of the major companies in this space, ITM Power based in the UK and Nel Hydrogen based in Norway, estimate sub $1.50 per kilogram green hydrogen production by 2025, and that in many applications draws near to SMR hydrogen, in particular for fuel cells, because for fuel cells and other applications like pharmaceutical production that require ultra-pure hydrogen, the cost of hydrogen is actually substantially higher than the cost for SMR. For green steel, the oxygen that's used in these processes is actually usable in the rest of the plant, and that increases the de facto cost or the de facto benefit of hydrogen beyond just the pure hydrogen cost. So even industry that does like to use the CO2 produced in SMR processes actually can do it more cost effectively with green hydrogen in particular. And this is where Ionomr's technology is a game changer in reducing the capex, because hydrogen cost is on a complex nexus of energy cost and the capex cost of electrolyzers and the capacity factor of electrolyzers. And if you can create a low enough capex electrolyzer, you can get down to a capacity factor of 30 to 50% and create hydrogen for less than 50 cents a kilogram. And this is really where we see. So one of the world's largest oil companies has taken a deep dive in our technology. And in February, there will be an announcement about this. And we believe that they see a trajectory at less than $1 per kilogram for green hydrogen using our technology. And in future, by driving this to higher compressions and this will actually reduce a lot of the system complexity. So there's the short-term benefits that we see by moving straight to alkaline, and there's longer-term benefits where we can even reduce this further by enhancing system simplification, higher compression of hydrogen produced, as well as much higher efficiencies, because that's one of the underappreciated things, is that alkaline is not just a me too for PEM electrolysis, is actually a lot more efficient, and advanced catalysis, like being produced in nickel electrocan, can not only eliminate all of the precious metals, not just most of the precious metals, but it can actually achieve even higher efficiencies than are achieved today. And early stage, one person who has integrated our materials actually doubled the efficiency of their PEM electrolyzer using our materials.
Okay. Alkaline water electrolysis, alkaline water electrolyzer with non-ionic separator have been around for decades. What advantage does amine membrane offer? Is it large enough?
Yes, so I guess to answer, is it large enough? I mean, Ionomr can produce wide, large films, and we've produced hundreds of kilograms of material through this SDTC BCI's project and else. And this is, again, 1,000 to 10,000 times the scale of other startups. We have materials, for context, 1 kilogram could support 9 full fuel cell cars. So these materials go a long way as thin films. And Norsk Hydro in 1920 developed traditional AM electrolyzers, and not a lot has changed in the material buildup, apart from replacing asbestos as the separator with something called zircon, which is a porous zirconium composite. But this is 500 microns thick, and we replace it with something that's less than 20% of that thickness. And we replace something that's porous, which is not a great thing for something that's designed to separate hydrogen and oxygen from directly combusting, with something that's non-porous. And so this allows us to run at much higher pressures, at greater efficiencies, and really also with much better pairing to intermittent renewables, because you need a response time of less than 10 milliseconds. Otherwise, you have to produce a whole bunch of different utility scale systems in between your electrolyzer and your grid production. And so this is where we change the balance of plant to make this technology more cost competitive. And driving, and I should also say that the separator is more than 90% of the resistance in this whole system. So all of the losses that are attributed to alkaline electrolysis is really from the separator. So using our technology, you can not only produce hydrogen more efficiently, but you can also produce up to 15x the amount of hydrogen per unit volume of a system. And so these large deployments can turn into containerized solutions for far more effective upscaling and distribution around the world. And this is why we believe that Canada can be a manufacturing hub, because you can make containerized solutions and transport them all around the world instead of building these gigantic installations. The Hydro Hub in Europe estimates between 25 and 50 hectares for a single gigawatt installation. So reducing that by 10x is not just important for driving costs down, it's absolutely vital for most of Europe, for Japan, for South Korea, and other places where there's land constraints.
The next question is from Eric Barker. Ben, can you confirm what your product technology readiness level, and more specifically, have you started to commercialize it?
Absolutely. So the TRL for our materials are around TRL 7 to 8, depending on how you characterize it. As a component, an enabling component supplier, our films have reinforced materials, which is considered state-of-the-art, both woven and non-woven materials. So woven looks like a woven sheet of material that has been fully intercalated with our polymer, and this is for the large format heavy-duty systems. Non-woven actually looks transparent, but it has something that's very much like Teflon tape at the middle of it as a reinforcement, and this is equal to the state of the art. And we are in the process of developing world-class quality controls, in the process of integrating ISO standards environmental, the regular 9001, as well as the automotive specifications. And so we're positioning as a fully qualifiable producer of these materials today. And all of the applications that use our materials are at a variety of TRL levels between, say, 4 and 7.
Ben, how can the federal and BC government support Ionomr's growth over the next year?
Well, we have a major grant application coming up, so I'd be happy to talk about this offline. In addition, there are numerous ways that we believe could be very helpful, not just for Ionomr, but for the growth of the Canadian hydrogen strategy as a whole, making these partnerships and providing support and impetus for combined projects, having some sort of parallel or purchase in what's known as the FCHJU projects for hydrogen in Europe and the Department of Energy projects in the United States, either having a parallel or a buy-in. For instance, Israel has a buy-in to both of these projects, and Ionomr, as a minimally funded enabler of these projects, would love to play a much larger role in international collaborations, but also have a parallel network in Canada where we can connect all of the dots within our own local industry through a framework such as these. And finally, there are multiple organizations in particular that I'm aware of in Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia that are capable of showing world-leading standards development and also forming a standards hub for hydrogen. To use a local example, since BC was in there, PowerCell is the company's PowerTech Labs, there we go, in Surrey, has hydrogen safe space, which is incredibly hard to come by in Canada and around the world. Hydrogen zoning is difficult and, more importantly, time consuming. Despite the relative safety of hydrogen, the zoning and just this long period of time in getting test systems up is a pain point. So having hydrogen safe space where multiple test stations and demonstration facilities could be rapidly deployed would actually be a benefit across Canada and around the world. And this is something that could immediately be deployed. I mean, you could have a facility of 100 test stations up and running in 3 months with enough willpower, and that would be a total game changer in Canada. So off the top of my head, those are ideas, but I'm very happy. Please reach out to any of our team and we can schedule meetings and have more in-depth discussions around this area.
Indeed, as Ben just mentioned, we're happy to take this conversation offline, and we are running out of time, and we've got just enough for one more question. So Ben, here's the last question. Are there specific aspects of Canadian hydrogen strategy that will help Canadian clean tech companies like Ionomr to scale and export?
Absolutely. The thrust of the Canadian hydrogen strategy is in all of the right directions, with a focus on both green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and CCU in there, in the framework. More solid targets and regulations would help drive this even faster. But in those 4 categories that I mentioned, there are multiple individual goals that more specifically we address, and more specifically will help our growth and connecting of Canadian industries. So again, happy to take this one into a larger conversation, more point by point.
So that wraps it up. Thank you everyone for showing up to our first webinar series. Again, this will be the first of many to come, and of course this will be recorded, and we will be sharing it across social media platforms and from our website. So please come by and check it out again, and we hope to see you again soon next time. Goodbye.